Well, hello everyone. Our guest is Mr. Fred Rush. His topic today is African American sailors in Perry's squadron on Lake Erie in the Battle of Lake Erie. And he's going to be talking about a wide variety of other topics that go along with this as well, much further in American history than just the War of 1812. Mr. Rush has held a wide variety of positions in both the public and private sector, volunteers his time serving on many boards and for many charities. Hello, Fred.
How are you?
Good, how are you?
Glad to be here.
Well, tell us a little bit about the topic and why you became interested in it.
Well, I've always been interested in the topic. I didn't know that much about the topic. See, I remember that I was up on blocks down there, and I grew up on 3rd and Holland. So we'd ride down our bicycles and go through it and listen to these old guys talk about it and everything else. And when they decided to try to float it again, I remember Denise Robinson was one of the major players, and Tom Ridge was one of the major players. I worked at the courthouse for Robbie Robinson, our first county exec at the point in time. So I was drafted to get involved in the whole thing. And I think they've done an excellent job of restoring it. They've got a nice history center about it. And then comes back around 20 some years later, my son needed an Eagle Scout project. So I thought about that. This is a good Eagle Scout project. It's never been done before. So his scout troop, and he took the lead, and they actually did some research along with some other good people, including my sister Cheryl, and they found out about some of the history there. And they got a Pennsylvania marker down there.
Which is not an easy thing to do.
Yeah, that was a battle, but if you know the governor, it helps.
Well, it helps, yeah, sure.
And then that kind of thing happened, and they had a great dedication. We had pictures of that, and you had a piece to do with it. So then I thought about this topic, and I said, this is a moment in time. I don't think either our young people or some of our older people understand the contribution that black men in particular and black women have made to this country through the military and their service.
That's right.
Starting back in the Battle of Bunker Hill, the first man killed was a guy named Crispus Attucks, a freed black man. So we've been rolling since then.
Well, you're a veteran of the United States Army. You saw action in Vietnam in the mid-60s, kind of early on. Do you see a parallel between your service and the struggles of the sailors and soldiers of the War of 1812?
Yeah, there is, because you're all kind of held out as being different because you are black, and that makes America a thing. You know, one thing about world history, it evolves. Now, our history now in this millennium basically is Western European history. When the Spanish and the Portuguese and the British went all around the world, they saw something very significant. The world didn't look like them. It was red and black and yellow and brown. So they set up a very neat system of saying, we have to be the boss of all these other people. And it's been established since then. An example I have from a history teacher said, one of the smallest countries in Europe is Belgium. But they had the biggest piece of Africa called the Belgian Congo, okay? And we have to realize that everybody has contributed to our history, whether it be Eastern Europeans or Egyptians or Hindus or Genghis Khan or whatever. We've gotten this modality now in America, like white is right. No, only 20% of this world is white. The rest is brown, yellow. And we have to reconcile that with reality is, these people with Perry fought to make this area free, and they did it with Perry. There's a letter that's written by Perry to his boss, Chancellery, and it basically says, I need men. We built the ships, I need men to man them. And Chancellery sent him 200 men. Perry wrote back and said to him basically, you sent me boys, old men, and blacks. What good are they? After the battle, he wrote another letter. Thank you. Send me some more of those folks. They are tough.
Yeah, he did change his tune considerably, didn't he? Yeah. Now, there's some talk that Perry was so desperately short of men.
Absolutely.
And he needed men, and at first he saw these men. But thinking about Perry having been in the Navy for as long as he had been, he's a young man, but he's still been in the Navy since he was a teenager. He would have been used to seeing black sailors. So it just wouldn't have been, perhaps he, some
but they
historians.
weren't under his command.
No, right. No,
All right.
Exactly.
That's what
right.
makes a difference in war or in business or whatever. If you're on top of the heap, you see it entirely different if you're working your way up the ladder. So.
Exactly. Well, keep going. Tell us about the sailors of the Battle of Lake Erie, black sailors. What little we know, right?
Oh, there's so much to learn about this group of men, and I suggest that you get a chance, go down to the library and go through the Maritime Museum, see the pictures, see the articles, listen to somebody tell you the stories, because some of these people stayed in Erie, and they took their reward money. One of the guys opened the first tavern down in Meadville, Black Guy ran tavern in Meadville. And they started staying. There's a lot of history related to the battle, staying in Erie. And we've done some research on that. And it blends into the rest of the Erie community. There were some problems with it because there was a lot of redlining. There were areas blacks could live and couldn't live. And there were schools you could go to and not go to school. And I remember when I was a little kid listening to my mom and dad argue about something that had happened at East High. They would not let the black kids swim in the pool. And that just infuriated folks. We had to take it to court, so we did the same thing. I was watching it all at the time, but it was fun. And there's a lot of room for Erie to grow. There's a lot of good people in Erie who are contributing and being active in politics and volunteerism. And it's a great community. I'm proud of my community. So
great. Now, I know that during the Civil War, black soldiers were not paid the same amount as white soldiers. And then that was changed before the war ended. But during the War of 1812, do we know that most of these men would have been able seamen or ordinary seamen? Were they paid the same as the white sailors were?
Some people asked for the pensions, and the families asked for the pensions. And the hardest thing about that is getting some consistency.
Yeah.
Were they colored, mulatto, black, brown? No one had a consistent system of defining who these people were.
Right. We've seen that with Civil War records too.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I found it interesting in reading that often their widows applied for these pensions, and that is about the only way, because the Navy didn't have a race designation on the muster roll, so there was no way to tell whether they were, black, white, mulatto, whatever. So therefore, they didn't know until the pension records or pension files were requested by their wives.
Well, the Navy had a very special problem of their own. They only enlisted blacks as either cooks or stewards.
Right.
All right. And you had to go along with that, but a lot of them did, and they joined the Navy, and the Navy Cross was awarded after the Pearl Harbor attack, the first one to a black sailor who mounted that 40 and took out 3 Japanese planes. Go boy. That's what has to happen.
What's his name? Dory?
Dory Pullman. Yep.
Yeah.
It's funny because I know, like when Roosevelt signed Executive Order 882, saying that the service basically had to pay everybody the same. That was fought by some of the military folks and everybody else, but he was consistent in knowing it had to be done. And when Truman came in, he actually integrated the military. So the first real integrated war we had was Korea. And then we rolled from that into Vietnam, and now we're rolling into Afghan, and then now we're I don't know where we're rolling into next.
Hopefully nowhere. Hopefully nowhere. Yeah.
That'll be opposite the human experience, but I'm willing to fight for it.
Right. I remember reading a story one time, and this whole way off the subject of the War of 1812, but of black soldiers, and your father fought in World War II. and going through the South to up some base or somewhere. And they're on a troop train. And the white soldiers were allowed to eat in the coffee shops in the little towns, but the black soldiers weren't. And the one soldier telling the story said they saw German POWs with military policemen being served, but the black soldiers in the United States Army were not allowed to be. That has always stuck with me, that story, that how wrong, an army that's fighting for freedom of the world, from free from fascism, they won't allow their own citizens, their own servicemen to eat.
Well, we've never really been considered full citizens to start with, okay? That's part of our psychosis as a nation. We never considered people of color or women as full citizens in this country.
Right.
We're fighting right now to get the first black female on the Supreme Court. We had a discussion the other day. I don't know if she's qualified or not. You're going to tell me 200 plus white men were all qualified? But there wasn't a single white woman or a black man you could find. All right. So I will argue my points, but I try to be nice to people. But if you see it right now, you can see it. You watch this argument coming up who Biden is going to appoint to the Supreme Court. Watch how ugly it gets. Is she qualified? She went to Harvard and then Georgetown. She's as qualified as they come. And it's one of the things we have to work at hard, because when you accept things that are absurd, the next step is to basically accept things that are basically atrocities. They did the same thing to the Germans.
Right.
It was absurd to separate the Jews from the rest of the tribe. And then the atrocities took place. We have to be, as a nation, a united country. People pay their dues, be part of America. Exactly. Nobody's getting a pass like someone thinks they are. Yeah. I'm particularly watching this whole thing with drivers going to Canada to say they won't take the vaccination shot. I just see so much anger and frustration and lack of communication and commitment that I'm nervous for my children, because we've got to find a way to come together. Here's a good place to start. How about that?
Well, are there any closing thoughts on the black sailors, Perry's Fleet?
I think we ought to search the black sailors of Perry's Fleet. I think we ought to search Henry Flipper, the first black graduate of the military academy. All right, I think we ought to research the Moffett Point Marines. It was the first black Marine unit. They set up a separate training facility for them. And I think we ought to be working to teach this to our children so they have a sense of pride.
Exactly.
This is what gives you the pride. I was taught by my uncles and grandpa and my dad, this whole thing. My dad has a story about coming back from World War II. Getting on a train, trying to get back to Mississippi, and everybody's sitting around, and they got to Cincinnati. And the conductor comes through and says, all the black troops have to go to the black car. He said, I just spent 3.5 years of my life fighting. But he said, now it's changed a little bit, but everything in America that is wrong can be changed if good people decide to do it. And that's always been the case. Well, it was Martin Luther King or a whole bunch of other folks who said, this is wrong. And I think looking people in the eye and say, this is wrong, and listen to them argue. I don't want my kid to wear a mask. You want him to live? I mean, just, come on. Stop being angry, stop being mad, let's move together.
Exactly. Well said.
Hey, that's what family's for.
Well, thank you, Fred.
Thank you for inviting me.
Tonight. Appreciate it.
All right.
Be sure to join us on March 2nd when our speaker will be Ken Springer, talking about the Erie to Cleveland trolley system. Thank you all for joining in. Thank you again, Fred. Appreciate it.